talked to my colleague Ana Cabrera about Comey's upcoming memoir. Listen.
He's going out actually pitching the book, and he's probably going to have the deal in the next few days. This is going to get interest from all the big publishing houses. You think about James Comey and the story he may be able to tell. According to the Times, this is not just going to be a tell-all. This is going to be a bigger book about his entire life's work, his career, and the big moments he has faced decisions in his career. But all it takes is a few pages or a few chapters about what happened with President Trump to get publishing houses very interested. So it's sort of a no-brainer move by him, but up until now we hadn't heard anything about a book deal. He'll be out shopping this now.
Brian Stelter there speaking with Ana Cabrera. The White House said that Comey was fired because President Trump lost confidence in the former FBI director. Fair to say, a lot to talk about. Let's bring in Brian Klaas. He is a fellow of comparative politics at the London School of Economics, live in our London bureau this hour. Brian, always a pleasure to have you with us here on the show. Let's talk first about the White House hiring this new high-powered attorney to help manage the possible legal questions, the perception issues from this controversy regarding the president's son. On one hand, White House officials say there's nothing to it. They call it a nothing burger, or the president called it a hoax. On the other hand, they're sharpening their strategy because it seems they're going into new territory here.
Well, they continue to claim it's a hoax. It's clearly not. The lawyering up that's happening throughout the White House shows that they take it seriously, and they should, because it's a very serious matter. There's a political and a legal side to this scandal. Politically speaking and morally speaking, it is absolutely clear that there was wrongdoing. This is a meeting that nobody should have ever accepted, and anyone who doesn't say that is going to look very bad in history. On the legal side, we don't know exactly how exposed the White House is. I would imagine that Jared Kushner is probably the most vulnerable because he was part of the campaign, part of that meeting, and now is in a top secret position in the White House as a senior level official with security clearance. And that may be revoked. So there's a very serious issue here, and anyone trying to still claim this is a hoax is just completely wrong. And it's so clear that it's wrong coming from the president's own son. He divulged the emails that show this is a very real story with very real political and legal consequences.
When it comes to these issues regarding President Trump's son, let's talk about the Fox News network. That has taken a more supportive, friendlier stance toward the Trump administration, especially the morning shows, the evening shows with its conservative hosts, to make the distinction here, the difference, not to discount the many journalists at Fox News who do the work of journalism every day at that network. But it has been notable that the conservative commentator Charles Krauthammer recently suggested the emails released by Don Trump Jr. are evidence of collusion. Then there was this from the Fox News anchor and journalist Shep Smith. Take a look.
Why is it lie after lie after lie? If you clean, come on, clean, you know? My grandmother used to say, when first we practice to, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. The deception, Chris, is mind-boggling. And there are still people who out there who believe we're making it up. And one day they're going to realize we're not and look around and go, where are we, and why are we getting told all these lies?
All right, that's Shep Smith there at Fox News, journalist and anchor there. Brian, before you answer this question, I want you to take a look at this snapshot of the president's approval rating from the Washington Post ABC News poll. Recently came out showing the approval rating down to 36% from 42%. His disapproval rating up at 58%. Brian, the question to you is, does all of this affect the president's base?
So it does to a great extent, but not among the Republican diehards. So Trump is currently the most unpopular president in U.S. history at this point in his presidency. He's well below Gerald Ford coming out of Watergate. And so this is something where, it really is damaging him. You cannot govern with 36% of the country believing that you're doing a good job. But on the other hand, his Republican base is still following him. There's still high approval ratings. 85% of Republicans seem to be backing the president. And part of this is because of that Fox News coverage, which is consistently backing the president no matter what he does. And when you have journalists like Shep Smith, who are finally, they've had enough. They say, look, this is a series of lies. We have seen lie after lie after lie. And at some point, it doesn't matter what your partisan bent is. Honesty is an American value. It's a value that we should all hold as sacrosanct in our public officials. And so I think that this is something where we're going to continue to see the morning shows, Sean Hannity, et cetera, carry water for the president no matter what. But other journalists at Fox News have their integrity to worry about, and they're pushing back.
All right, so those are the clouds looming in the skies for the Washington, for the White House, but at the same time, on the ground, health care. That's the big topic. The key promise from U.S. Republicans to repeal and replace Obamacare, delayed again. It's a procedural vote on the revised Senate bill that will be postponed now, Brian, until after Republican Senator John McCain recovers from surgery to remove a blood clot. Republicans need Mr. McCain's vote to even begin a debate on this proposed legislation. This health care bill, delayed again, Brian, put it into context for an administration and Republican legislators who have been given the task to get this done. Our Tom Foreman said it very well in a piece that he recently published, but it's right there in front of them, but they haven't gotten it done yet.
Well, and frankly, they shouldn't get it done because it's a bad piece of legislation. This bill is popular among 17% of Americans, and that's because they understand that it's going to increase costs for people who are sick and older. It's going to kick people off insurance who are poor and disabled. And it's going to allow people to buy junk insurance that doesn't cover basic things like prescription drugs and hospitalization, which is what medical insurance is about. And so they need to go back to the drawing table, the drawing board, and sit down with Democrats and fix this problem. There are real problems with Obamacare. They need to be fixed. But this, without any sort of public hearings and all of these independent assessments that are showing the problems will get made worse by this bill, they need to take stock of those criticisms and go back to the drawing board. And I think it's a very important political problem for them because the longer this is delayed, and it will be delayed because of McCain's absence, the harder it is to pass because opposition is mobilizing increasingly against the bill.
Brian Glass, live for us in London. Thank you for the insight, Brian. As we mentioned, President Trump is spending the weekend in Bedminster, New Jersey, the location of one of a dozen golf resorts that he owns in the United States. And right now, his business is waging war in the courts over the taxes on those resorts, as our Kyung La reports.
Trump National Golf Club Jupiter, a 285-acre luxury state-of-the-art property. Good enough for the president to host Japan's prime minister, later golfing on the lush course. In federal election filings just last month, the Trump organization claims its value is more than $50 million. But in a lawsuit filed Thursday against Palm Beach County, Trump's lawyers argue it's worth far less than what the county assesses it at, $18.4 million. In 2014, Trump's lawyers claimed it's worth no more than $5 million. Why?
If you lower the value?
If you lower the value, you pay less taxes.
So it's about how much you pay the town?
Yeah, it's about how much you pay the state of Florida and the city and the county of Palm Beach, yes.
It's a years-long pattern repeated practically every year. Public records show Trump has fought the tax assessments on all 12 of his U.S. golf courses, except the one in Bedminster, New Jersey, where he gets a farmland tax break for having goats on the property. The Trump organization is also suing the small town of Ossining, New York, population 40,000, to lower his taxes on his Westchester golf course. Touting a 101-foot waterfall at the 13th hole, Trump National claims it's the most expensive golf hole ever constructed. In campaign filings, Trump says the course is worth more than $50 million. But in 2015, his attorneys argued the course was worth far less, only $1.35 million. The tax difference between those two values is about $425,000 a year.
I just think it's so unfair. I mean, who is going to be paying the difference except for the people of Ossining?
Trump's lawyers are also fighting the people of Rancho Palos Verdes, south of Los Angeles, home to another luxury golf resort. Public tax documents obtained by CNN show in 2007 the course was worth $67 million. But year after year, Trump filed hundreds of appeals to drop the value of the golf course by tens of millions of dollars. All those appeals have dropped the value to $27.7 million, down $40 million in 9 years. Multiple tax experts tell CNN that Trump is not alone in what he's doing. Many wealthy people have attorneys fighting to lower their tax burden. But there's an important difference with Donald Trump now.
Do you find anything overall problematic since the person we're talking about is the president of the United States?
If you think the system is easily manipulated, why should the average person have to pay taxes or value property properly or pay their fair share?
CNN did reach out to the Trump Organization for comment on the Jupiter property as well as the other Trump Gulf properties. We did not receive a response. Kyung-La, CNN, Los Angeles.
Kyung-La, thank you for the reporting. Still ahead here on Newsroom. The leaders of France and Israel pay tribute to the victims of Veldiv, one of the darkest moments in French history. CNN is live in Paris next. Plus, Turkey's president issues a gruesome threat 1 year after a failed coup. How the country has marked that anniversary ahead. And later, the new queen of center court, the Spanish star who beat Venus Williams for the Wimbledon title. Stay with us.
Relief starts now.
Fresh from hosting the U.S. president, French President Emmanuel Macron is welcoming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Paris. France and Israel are marking the anniversary of the Veldiv. 75 years ago, French authorities arrested some 13,000 Jews in and around Paris under orders from the Nazis who occupied this part of France during World War II. They were rounded up and eventually deported to concentration camps, and that includes more than 4,000 children. Very few of them survived. Earlier, President Macron attended a minute of silence for the victims at the Vélodrome d'Hiver in Paris. He and Mr. Netanyahu then attended a ceremony at the square of the Jewish martyrs of Veldiv, and they will be talking international diplomacy later on this morning and this afternoon. William Jordan joins me now to discuss that. He's a former U.S. diplomat and independent analyst now on the Middle East. Jordan, William, it's great to see you again. And one of the first things I think that Mr. Netanyahu is going to want to do is he's going to probably want to assess where Mr. Macron stands on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because every French president has wanted to put France on the map on that issue.
Well, you know, Cyril, I actually think it may be more the reverse. I think it may be Macron wanting to sound out Netanyahu as to whether or not right now there's a moment of opportunity that perhaps France can help to seize in terms of moving the long frozen negotiations on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Netanyahu doubtless wants to get his own read of Macron. Netanyahu hasn't been in Paris, if I'm not mistaken, since the 2015 Charlie Hebdo commemoration, or I shouldn't say commemorations, but the March of Sympathy.
And the attack on the Jewish market, a very emotional time for him and for the country and France's Jewish population at the time.
But since then, I mean, there's been, as you probably remember, when the previous president tried to organize a conference here in Paris in the early part of 2017 to try to move the Palestinian negotiations along, the Israelis basically balked and said, no, not now, this is not a good time, and we're not going to take part.
Where do you think, Mr. Macron, is there any chance that he departs from typical French policy, which is support for the two-state solution? That appears to be what he has voiced during his campaign.
Well, you know, he may be a little bit on the same wavelength as Donald Trump in terms of being prepared to accept whatever the parties will accept. In other words, if the parties agree, however unlikely that may be, with a one-state solution, I think he might be prepared to go along with that. Again, the real question here, in my mind, given the history of French efforts to insert themselves into the diplomacy of the Middle East, is are they trying to mark a departure from what has traditionally been an American-led effort, or are they trying to complement the effort? Given the fact that Donald Trump was just here, I have to believe that there was some discussion on the side, you know, of all of the other many issues that they had to discuss, especially climate change. I have to believe that the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu was coming, and to get some direct briefing from Donald Trump as to what Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is doing now in trying to push trying to find an opportunity for the Israeli-Palestinian discussions. I have to believe that that was literally on the table, perhaps when they were talking over dinner at the Eiffel Tower.
But does France have any leverage, any particular leverage on this topic? Because you mentioned the International Peace Conference that François Hollande held just a few months ago. 70 countries came, fine, but the Israelis didn't come. Right. And in the end, there was a communique and then no follow-up.
It literally depends on how the Israeli government of the time, and the Prime Minister in particular, is feeling about France. France's leverage is variable. France tends to have more leverage when it's taking an effort which has the full support and backing of the European Union. And right now, it's not clear to me where the European Union as a whole is. I think that generally the feeling is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is sort of stuck. And there's not a lot of impetus, to be quite honest, with everything that's going on with the struggle against the Islamic State, Syria in turmoil, Iraq needing to be resolved, and Egypt, despite the Sisi regime being fully in control. You know, there's enough concern about stability issues in Egypt that I don't believe right now anybody feels this is an opportune time to launch a major effort unless, and this is always key, unless the Palestinians and the Israelis politically see that there's an opportune moment to do so.
Yeah, and it's not clear that that is the case at present, but you bring up the fight against ISIS, and maybe that's where there could be more agreement or more direct impact, because when Mr. Trump was here, we saw that there's an alignment of sorts. If you look at Russia, you look at the United States, and now we've learned, you look at France, they're all now pretty much on the same page, no longer prioritizing the departure of Bashar al-Assad, and instead prioritizing the fight against the Islamic State, which is something that Israel would probably agree with.
Yes, but the issue of how much Israel is a part of the campaign against Islamic State is problematic. I mean, we've already seen that in terms of the Syrian civil war, Israel's limited assistance to some of the rebel groups near the Golan Heights has aroused great ire on the part of the regime in Damascus and has prompted a certain number of clashes on what had, prior to the 2011 outbreak of the Civil War, been a relatively, and in fact, not even relatively, almost completely quiet front in the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I think the Israelis, you know, what's important for the Israelis in all of this is to be consulted. I think that from the point of view of major coalition partners like France and the United States, it's important too to have that quiet intelligence cooperation with the Israelis, because as was dramatically speculated when after Donald Trump met with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister in Washington, and he may have inadvertently divulged secret intelligence that came from the Israelis. The Israelis do have assets and they do have concerns, and they are players, even if they're very much behind the scenes and in the background.
William Jordan, great to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be listening to what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the French President Emmanuel Macron have to say when they give a joint press conference a little later on today. We'll bring you the details on that when it happens. But let's pivot to Turkey now, because massive crowds have turned out across the country to mark 1 year since a failed coup attempt against Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Mr. Erdogan made appearances in both Istanbul and in the capital, Ankara, and he unveiled this monument in the capital for people killed in the effort to end his rule. The president has led a mass crackdown since the coup attempt. He says US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen was behind that. And in Istanbul on Saturday, he promised no mercy for those that he says betrayed the country.
We know who is behind these terrorists. However, there is also the fact that if you do not combat and fight against these pieces, we cannot fight and overcome those who are manipulating them. Therefore, we are going to behead these traitors.
CNN's Arwa Damon was at that rally, and she's been looking at how people are remembering both the coup attempt and the crackdown that followed.
The bulk of the crowd has already made its way towards the Bosphorus Bridge that has now been renamed the 15th of July Bridge. And this particular neighborhood, Çengelköy, this is where in Istanbul, at least, the very first bullet was fired. This bakery, for example, people were saying that coup plotters stormed inside and even held some of the customers there hostage. There is a police station that is down the road. You also have one of Istanbul's main military academies down the road as well. And one of the employees at the restaurant across the street, he was telling us that another one of their colleagues was killed that night, and that a wounded man on the street corner who they were trying to help, they were unable to reach him because he said the coup plotters prevented them from doing that. And just about everyone who we speak to, especially in this neighborhood, has a horror story to tell of that night. This is Mr. Yahya Ardam, and he was here that night. They were just out enjoying the evening, and he was just telling us that people were coming down buradan geldiler, değil mi? These little side streets. And there was one of their friends who was standing right here who they shot and killed. And you can see the bullets still in the glass, and he was saying that the owner of this store decided not to repair it so that people don't forget what it is that the country went through. This is one of the roads that people took the night of the failed coup to get to the bridge, where they actually faced off with tanks. And one of the main reasons why, arguably, the coup did not succeed is because citizens of this country heeded President Erdogan's call to take to the streets. Because no matter how divided this nation may be, how polarized it may be, the population here is by and large united behind one basic concept, and that is that the era of military coups is over, and people will unite behind that notion that they must do all that they can to preserve democracy. The bridge itself is absolutely packed. You can barely move up there, and people keep on arriving, some of them carrying the photographs of those who died trying to stop the coup from taking place. Around 250 people lost their lives standing up to the coup plotters. Turkey's president's message throughout all of this has been that no one is going to divide this country. He's really been trying to rally the population around him. But at the same time, this does remain a very polarized nation because there is growing concern about the direction that the country is going in from those who oppose the current president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and they are very concerned about the post-coup crackdown where tens of thousands of people were jailed, either accused of being directly involved or being members of the Gülenist movement. That is the movement that Turkey believes was behind this thwarted coup attempt. Additionally, around 150,000 government employees have lost their jobs. People that worked at ministries within the judiciary, journalists have also been jailed. So a lot of people, despite this show of force that we're seeing out on the streets on this day, do remain very concerned about what the future of their country is, because at this stage, no one knows exactly what is going to be happening next or what direction Turkey is going to take. Arwa Damon, CNN, Istanbul.
Still to come on CNN Newsroom, what do we know about the mystery man at that meeting?
Trusted name in news.
Welcome back. Let's get to the sporting part of the show. Lots of sports today in Europe. In Formula One, Lewis Hamilton hoping to thrill the home crowd at Sunday's British Grand Prix. Amanda Davis is there with us for more on that. Look, Amanda, you're going to tell me about the fans in just a second, but first, just the resilience of this man, of Lewis Hamilton. He had a tough week, and now he has bounced back and claimed pole.
Welcome to the paddock here at Silverstone, the home of the British Grand Prix. This is the main entrance, which is a lot of the TV cameras and the snappers that are focused on there as the drivers have now arrived. We saw Fernando Alonso, the McLaren driver, arriving a little bit late. He was pretty much running through the turnstiles, but now the celebrities and all those who've been invited by the teams to really one of the highlights of the British, if not international sporting calendar, have started to arrive. Michael Johnson, the four-time Olympic gold medal-winning sprinter, has just arrived. The Kaiser Chiefs are expected to be here a little bit later on. But yeah, the focus is on what has been a spectacular battle so far this season on the track, hasn't it? And as you mentioned, three-time world champion Lewis Hamilton has been under fire in the last couple of weeks, should we say. He was criticised for being the only driver in this paddock not to turn up to a big event in the centre of London on Wednesday night. He's had some poor performances on the track in the recent weeks in Austria and Azerbaijan, but he responded in the way that he knows best, and that is by doing his stuff on the track. And he put in a fantastic lap in Saturday's qualifying session in some pretty tough conditions. You might be able to see very, very grey skies here. It's been windy, it's been wet, it's done a bit of everything in true British weather form. It was a lap, though, that Lewis himself described as spectacular to take that pole position, his 5th pole here at Silverstone. But he now needs to today, in about 4 hours from now, convert that pole into the top step of the podium, because he really needs to start closing the gap at the top of the championship standings on his title rival, Sebastian Vettel, who's based here in the red of Ferrari. But that is sometimes easier said than done. And I spoke yesterday after the qualifying session to the 2009 world champion Jenson Button. He, in all of his time, 16 years in Formula One, could not produce the victory here at Silverstone in front of his home fans. And he said he will be hoping that Lewis Hamilton will be able to do that later today. And does it mean, as a British driver, there's a bit of you that would like Lewis to win in front of the home fans tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've watched qualifying live ever. So it was nice to be out there when he got his pole and see the crowd. And it's not just, yay, he got pole. There's a lot of emotion in people's eyes, and it's really good to see. It's nice to see that love for the sport as a whole. But yeah, having a British guy on pole is great. But you need the guy that's starting behind him. You need Sebastian Vettel. Whether you love him or you hate him, you need him to make this championship special. So it's good to see that he's up there as well.
And that guy who is up there chasing Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, has just run in to the motorhome behind us with a big smile on his face. He is a 4-time world champion, and he has shown in recent weeks that the gloves are very much coming off in this title fight. There is no love lost. It is a real battle, and he will not be giving up that lead in the championship standings without a fight. It promises to be a fantastic couple of hours here at Silverstone.
Amanda Davis, good to speak to you. Thank you very much. We'll get updates from you throughout the day. Now let's go to Wimbledon, where newly crowned champion Garbiñe Muguruza says it was incredible to take on her idol, Venus Williams. And really, it's just remarkable, a remarkable accomplishment for the Spanish star, because just 6 weeks ago, she was in tears after losing in the French Open. And it also means that Williams has, of course, been denied her 6th Wimbledon title. She had been trying to become the oldest winner of a major championship in the Open era. Let's look ahead to the men's final. Roger Federer is aiming for a record 8 trophies. CNN tennis analyst Ravi Uba joins us now from Wimbledon in southwest London. Ravi, you're going to educate me. It wasn't that long ago that Federer appeared to be declining, and now this, another Wimbledon final. What's behind this Federer renaissance?
Well, Cyril, that's a good question. You know, there was a time, indeed, when people thought, was he going to ever win another Grand Slam title? He hadn't won one since 2012, and then he wins the Australian Open. I think behind the renaissance, obviously, he's great. He's considered one of the best, if not the best player of all time in the world of tennis. And number two, I think he's been very smart in what he's been able to do in handling his body, because he's going to be 36 next month, and he took a very hard decision last year after Wimbledon to take 6 months off to get his body good, get his body fit after struggling with a knee injury last season. And then he came back. He took another break this year. He missed the French Open so he could get ready for Wimbledon. I think all the decisions that he's made throughout his career, where he's always taken little breaks throughout seasons, has really helped him when you combine that with the greatness that he exhibits on the court.
So he's played some of his best tennis right there where you are. What's your prediction for this match?
I think Federer definitely has the edge. I would say 60-40. He's playing someone called Marin Cilic. Federer is in his 11th final. Cilic is in his first. So experience, he does edge it. And obviously he's playing so well on the grass. His average time on court this year is only an hour and a half. But I must say, Cyril, last year when they met in the quarterfinals, Cilic had 3 match points on Federer. And he's also beaten Federer at a Grand Slam in New York in 2014. I think outside